So it shouldn't be too long. I just wanna. We're both gentlemen within his appreciation for the most beautiful colors. So I wanted to document that. So first, why don't you just introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Dean Quinlan. I'm a senior at Virginia Tech currently. I'm 22 years old, and yes, I do have a keen interest in the color purple as my favorite color.
Okay. And why are you attracted to the color purple?
Well, I think it's definitely one of the most unique ones in the visible spectrum. I think blue and red are some of the most noticeable colors that we find ourselves in our daily lifestyles. I mean, the sky being a big blue and blood being sort of like the red that runs in our veins. Purple is, of course, a combination of the two, obviously, but it's somehow a very exotic color in nature. You only find them in flowers, which themselves hold exotic colors. But other than that, they're extremely hard to find in regular circumstances. Now, the same could be said for other colors like pink, as well as perhaps like some shades of gray. But I think purple is something of a deep color as well as exotic. And bright colors, honestly, have never been really something that I enjoyed looking at very much. Yellow sort of hurts the eyes when overexposed. So calmer colors like blue and purple, of course, not only are pleasant to look at and easy to draw in, but are also exotic enough to be interesting.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. It's red's got that strength and that energy to it, but it can be aggressive and, blood and sexuality, that's all red. And then blue, it's got integrity and like spirituality, but it's also got somberness and sadness, and you put it together, then you get the most beautiful color. And then pink, I agree with you, like pink is, you could say it's an exotic color, but you get like a pink sunset, and not that that's not beautiful, but purple, you just don't see purple in nature. But purple's just so ethereal and psychedelic, and like you see it in space, and
it's almost supernatural in its presence.
It's supernatural, absolutely super.
And to hit on those comments about red and blue, I think that purple definitely strikes as a balance. I mean, that's actually one of the artistic choices that I think was drawn upon in the Star Wars films, specifically the prequels. Whereas Mace Windu is supposed to represent a sort of balance between the light side and the dark side, his lightsaber color is purple. Well, that was at the behest of a request from the actor who played him, Samuel Jackson. I think the result of purple acting as a balancing color still strikes the iconography of those films.
Yeah. I think although the reason is Samuel L. requested the saber, I think there is like a deeper, more poetic reason that is there, like,
well, intentional or not, it's still present somehow.
Yeah, exactly. So what does purple represent to you now? Most people would say royalty. I think that's like the widely accepted version. But what does purple represent to you?
Honestly, purple, in the royal sense, the sense that it represents royalty has never really struck me as a reason why I like the color purple.
I agree.
I thought it was an interesting inclusion in certain flags that represent royalty, but to me, royalty is something of a red and gold color, something that strikes wealth and arrogance almost. And that's definitely a certain themography in monarchy, in the sort of like stereotypical images you think of the medieval times, or in dictatorships in general. Someone of a high status that has a bit of arrogance to throw their weight around. Purple, however, that deep exoticness doesn't seem like something that would come from a man in a high castle. Rather, someone who is more akin to a vagabond, someone who travels around, has a balanced and diverse understanding of nature and the world. I think that is something that would be more representative of what purple is as a color. So I think something of diversity, something of balance, something of the ability to get a wider and perhaps more truthful scope of reality is something that is more indicative of what the color purple is. So those would be the themes and symbols that I would attribute the color purple to, rather than something as trivial as royalty.
I agree 100% everything you said, and the word balance. Like, purple is harmony. Purple They say you put on purple, that's spiritual protection. It helps align your body and your mind into your body, your soul, your mind into one being. But what do you feel like? So? Would you say the color purple speaks to you?
I would.
What do you think purple is telling you? What does it say?
I think it's when I see purple and I think about the things that I feel it represents. I harken back to some of the experiences I've had in other countries. The dichotomy between my two parents, who are my father, who is of a Western culture, and my mother, who is of Asian culture. These two cultures can normally butt heads when strangers meet from these two places. Asian culture is a lot more strict, I'd say, generally. Chinese culture specifically is very financially focused, and it's also got a heavy emphasis on the importance of the leader. While as Western culture is a lot more individualistic, it's more individual scoped, it's more focused on the equality and the equity of men and women, and a huge emphasis on the body of the whole rather than the representative, rather than like the strong man, is something that's more indicative of Western culture. And yet, my two parents strike a balance when teaching me. My father is a lot more humorous, while my mother is more strict, but both of them somehow work in synchronous with each other. That, coupled with some of the experiences I've had in other countries, of the emphasis of Western and Asian culture, the dichotomy between the two, yet the unexpected balance that's struck between them, I think is something that really resonates with me and is expressed in the color purple.
Has purple always stuck out to you? Has it always been your favorite color?
Not exactly, to be honest. Growing up, I was never much of an aggressive person. I didn't play much sports. I often did get bullied and had a hard time standing up for myself. So the color blue really spoke to me in those times when I would find moods that are more somber, more light, more slow going. It was definitely the kind of motion of my spirit, I'd say, to speak poetically. But as I got older, I began to pursue public speaking as a way to foster some skills that people were telling me I should foster. Over time, I used those skills to gain a lot of friends in a sense that I started to define myself based on the types of people you'd expect to be good at public speaking. Politicians, certain historical significant figures, and from that I started scoping a better outlook of myself, something that was more confident, something that was more assertive, and at the same time, I never abandoned this slow-moving spirit of mine that I'd always grown up with. But the old coupled with the new, I think, forged ahead into a new type of person that I eventually culminated into being once I began my years in college. And it was then that I began to look at the color purple with a much more sympathetic feel. I think it was at that point in sophomore year of college that I had chosen purple to be my favorite color.
You said a couple of things that really resonated with me. One is you said you never were an aggressive person, and I relate to that because I was never an aggressive person. But I think that's interesting. Red, orange, yellow, those are all kind of like harsh, aggressive colors, right? And you've never been attracted to them. You said you were attracted to blue, and I just think that's an interesting idea to reflect upon, is how just the colors you're drawn to is a reflection of who you are. And then the other thing you said that I thought was interesting was you have a slow-moving spirit or slow-moving soul. Mm-hmm. And I think that is, I mean, again, that's just, your choice of liking purple is a reflection of that slow-moving soul. They say that artists and philosophers are naturally drawn to the color purple. Do you think that's true? And do you think that you are an artist or philosopher?
Well, I can't speak for other artists and philosophers, but if they all sort of, I suppose, coincidentally had a yearning for the color purple, it'd be an interesting observation if true. But do I consider myself among their ranks? Ever since I was young, I did try to interrogate ideas about reality, about time. At one point in my middle school, I had interrogated the themes of destiny and fate. Many stories from Greek philosophers and from other religions and cultures foretell of prophecies and fates that are difficult to fight, and to fight them would be to, in some inevitable way, fulfill them as well. Now, I don't think that we have yet reached a point in our abilities as a human culture to fully predict the future, but I do think that the truth of the future is out there somewhere, and that there is some predetermined destiny, intentional or not, for all of us. But at the same time, and that doesn't mean that our ability to exert our own free will doesn't exist as well. Now, free will is sort of an interesting thing to define. You can say that it means the power to have influence over yourself, or you can use it as a distinction between the power that a person exerts rather than the power that water exerts. Water abides by strict rules of gravity, of its own physics, while humanity and its creative choices are much more free-flowing and more predictable. I would assert, and this is to speak of what I would think about in middle school, I would think that humans are much more equative to water, that we do abide by strict rules, we do abide by laws of physics and our own physical natures, and that they're more complex than that which you would find in abiotic matter, but still predictable and still observable and measurable all the same, albeit with different measurements and different observations. So I don't know if those assertions quite exactly make me an artist or a philosopher, but to speak on those same topics and themes that they speak about is something I definitely do.
Do you feel you're an existential person?
To reflect on the state of existence, I think, is, I suppose, something that a metaphysical philosopher has to engage in. But I'm also very interested in the pursuit of knowledge as a tangible or intangible thing. What exactly is true, and how do we measure how much we know and don't know? That's also something I would want to inquire and interrogate as I grow older and write more in my adulthood years. So, existentialism and epistemology, I think, are the two fields of philosophy where I find myself more interested in.
Do you think purple as a color is representative of how you feel inside, how your soul feels, how your spirit feels?
I think so. I mean, to speak on what I've said before about balance, I think that it certainly equates to those themes that I find very true about myself. Mm-hmm. And I think that purple, because of its exoticness, speaks to a spirit of adventure, a spirit for finding information, of finding theories, and finding valuable ways and cultures and styles of doing new things, of approaching problems with a new perspective. And it's interesting that we as a species are unlike other animals in that we repeatedly do the same processes over time. To an extent, this is true. I mean, we still use tools, if you are going to be broad like that. We still farm, and yet we are always finding new ways to invent ourselves. And we're an incredibly dynamic and fast-moving species. Always inventing a new object, inventing a new way of doing things, or taking the same problems and approaching them differently. Even using old ideas and putting a new spin on it. I think that this curiosity and this ability to be so dynamic compared to other species is something that is intrinsic to human nature, intrinsic to the human character, and exoticness is a big part of that. To find what is exotic and use it to our advantages is something that is human at the end of the day. And exotic colors like pink, purple, and even blue to some extent, blue being exotic within nature and life, I think is it tracks as something that is characteristic of ourselves.
Give me a second. I had a question and then some noise happened and I lost my question.
Oh, you're fine. If you want, I can silence that, by the way.
No, it's okay. I had the question. I actually had two, but it'll come back to me. Damn, I was really excited to ask you this question too, but it's okay. It'll come back. So people might say, because purple is such an unreal color, you might be able to escape into it. Do you? Oh, my question came back to you. Okay, so you wear purple often, right? Like I noticed. I remember one time I was like, "Let me buy those purple shorts off you." You said no because they're purple. Do you find comfort in wearing purple, or why do you choose to wear purple?
Well, moments like people asking to buy my shorts or inquiring about how purple they are, I think are some of the moments where I enjoy wearing purple the most. I enjoy wearing things that are somewhat expressive, even to a small extent. I think it's the same reason why people decide to get tattoos. Mm-hmm. Something on the skin, something that you portray to the rest of the world, that is a part of yourself that you wouldn't be able to portray under normal circumstances.
It's a language.
Mm-hmm. And while someone may ask you what your favorite color is, normally that inquiry comes with a more mundane answer to be expected. I like yellow because it's the color of my car. Would be something along the lines of a mundane question such as, what is your favorite color? But to delve deep into the color purple and why exactly its nature strikes at us as people and why it relates to us so heavily as individuals, I think is something that is a bit harder to run into the layman's conversations that we have day to day. And so what I do is I, little by little, portray what I am, portray what I feel in the clothes that I wear and in the things that I express myself with, purple being one of them. I also feel quite Hawaiian, which is hence why I tend to wear a lot of clothes that I purchase from the state. And yeah, but besides that, I like wearing purple also because it does feel somewhat characteristic of myself. And in a sort of aesthetic sense, I suppose, for lack of a better word, just feels right for myself.
Beautiful. Do you think, or do you foresee a time where you outgrow purple? The way you were once blue, you said you were attracted to blue, and then suddenly your sophomore year of college you were attracted to purple. Do you think it's something, maybe you're 32 one day, maybe red's your favorite color?
I think it definitely depends on the type of life exposure that I have. I can see myself in a certain circumstance where I'm camping out a lot more. I find myself out in the wilderness. I might find that green is a more indicative color because of how much it strikes at me as a natural person. And engaging in nature would be something that green represents. But as long as I am who I am today, I think I'll continue to like the color purple.
Now, here I'm gonna list some negative associations of purple, and I just want you to respond to those.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just wait a second so your roommate can pass by.
Yeah, thank you. I'll get out of your hair.
So this is just a list of negative associations. It got rained on, so I can't read it all, but I'll try my best. So some negative associations of purple are immaturity, being improper, cynical, aloof, pompous and arrogant, fraudulent and corrupt, and delusions of grandeur. Do you think it's accurate to associate those with purple, or do you think it's fair to associate with purples, or how do you respond to that?
Immaturity, aggregate, delusional. When I think about these things, I kind of associate them with the historical connection between royalty and purple. And I wouldn't want to undermine the association between royalty and purple. While I personally disagree with it, it does have some basis in historical accuracy. Many flags use the color purple in order to represent a form of royalty. It would be as correct to say that royal is not purple as it would be to say that ni hao isn't hello. In some cultures and some languages it is, and while some other cultures and maybe even personal beliefs it wouldn't be. But the fact of the matter is that it is a language that is spoken by people to represent certain things. Whether those languages are the most effective at communicating well, that's to open another can of worms. So if you would want to associate these negative connotations with purple, I'd say they're part of a different language, a language that I frankly don't speak. I try to use color and the sights of life in order to draw in things that are useful to us, that are beneficial, that are positive. Because to associate certain colors, to associate like something that is intrinsic to the world. I mean, color is invented. It is something that we detect. It is a real part of the visible spectrum that we are able to see with our human brains. And to establish some sense of communication, to attribute it to a certain themology, is to make tools. I mean, symbols, they're as much of a tool as a hammer is. While the hammer builds a house, the symbol builds a mental framework for how we are able to build attitudes, how we're able to build perspectives about the world around us. And to associate negative connotations with color would be to build a faulty hammer, in my case, in my perspective. It would be to build a faulty house. It would be to build a faulty framework of how we see the world. So while I would disagree with them, I wouldn't assert my perspective as correct, simply as something that I choose to do in order to live the best life that I feel I can.
Do you think there's things that people can learn from the color purple alone?
I feel like every color, every representation that you put onto it is a reflection of how you see the world. So to draw something upon color, to do so is to sit and meditate with it and find not only what is true about the color, but what the color reflects about yourself. I think that truth and self-reflection are the things that all colors of the visible spectrum are able to provide in some manner or capacity for everyone. So I would recommend people to meditate and figure out what these colors mean to them. And perhaps also investigate what they mean for other people, which is a beautiful asset in the realm of making art, whether it's film or paintings, or even in the descriptions of how we paint worlds in literature. Red means good luck in Chinese culture, while it means aggressiveness and hate in other cultures. And figuring out those dichotomies and figuring out the ways they represent these colors, how to represent these colors to certain audiences, I think is not only advantageous for others and for your own work, but also for your own perspectives in life.
So color is a language, but you need to...
But it's good to...
It's not defined.
It's not defined. A sound, for example, the sound of hello, it means different things to different people. It could mean confusion to someone who doesn't speak English, or a greeting to someone who does. Or to someone who is unfamiliar with the sound of a human voice, simply sees it as the presence of another human being. Cats, for example, would see the word hello not as a greeting nor a state of confusion, but rather the presence of a human creating a sound that identifies itself as a human, which is where the meows and growls of a cat comes from, as imitations of this presence to welcome back that presence of a human, to show that it is a welcome presence. And I think it's an objective state of reality that translates into meaning that when we attribute those meanings, and it's something that not only humans do, but it's also something that other creatures do. So yes, color is a language. Color is a word in the natural sense, but what we choose to attribute to it simply is a reflection of who we are.
Beautifully said. I think balance has been a recurring theme over this conversation. We talked about, purple is balance, purple is harmony, red plus blue. And then you talked about the balance, the balance of your parents, your mom on one end of the spectrum, one end of the scale, your dad on the other. And if it wasn't that balance, it'd be too much red, too much blue. Do you feel like you live and practice with balance?
I won't assert that I am perfect. At times I am more aggressive than I should be. At times I am much more lazy than I should be, and much more lax. But I think that balance is a virtue, and to strive for balance is to strive virtuously.
Alright, and then one final question is, to me, purple is peace, compassion, empathy, and I feel like what purple says to me is to love without fear. Do you feel like that's what Can you hear Purple saying that?
To love without fear.
Love without fear. To love fearlessly.
To love something, to admire something greatly, to do so in exchange for a fearingness of to be adverse to something unknown, to not want to engage with something because it is unknown is fear. To instead welcome the unknown is to welcome adventure, to welcome exoticness, and to admire it. Even to admire that sense of adventure is to pursue knowledge, is to pursue truth. So yes, I would say in that sense I do agree that it means to love without fear. It means to welcome the new and welcome the progressive, and to be willing to change whenever it best suits us.
Beautiful. All right, thank you. I enjoyed hearing someone who appreciates the color as deeply as I do.
Thank you very much.
Do you have anything else you wish to add about the color or anything else?
I think we've hit all the good marks.
All right, great. Did you see the play yet?
What was that?
Completely unrelated. Did you see Describe the Night, the play yet?
Oh, I have not. Where would I see that?
It shows at Squires. I think tonight's the last night.
Oh, damn. I might be a bit busy tonight. What's it about?
I don't even know. I just have to see it for class.
Oh, I see.